Hi, my name is Ben Reese, your faithful skeptic, and I've been thinking about a very useful ministry tool that I've been using for some time now called a prayer calendar. Now, I did not come up with this idea. I'm not even sure the person who taught me came up with this idea, but this resource comes from Paul Watson of Contagious Disciple Making, and his link will be in the description below this video if you want to go check out his ministry. It's extremely cool if you want to get some really awesome personal coaching and community if disciple making is your passion. Anyway, I just want to share this one tidbit that he has taught me so I can share with you, and it's really neat. So the original version of this, the main point of doing a prayer calendar would be to mobilize a community of prayer, and you do that by writing a list out of 28 to 30 of your friends who are faithful believers in Christ. By the way, if you're not a Christian, this will probably be totally bewildering to you. So, buyer beware. But if you're a Christian and you want to do more for the Lord, this is a great way to do it. That's very, very easy. It just takes about 5 minutes a day. And the idea is you write that list of 28 to 30 Christians that you know, other believers, and you reach out to them one time a month, right? You just go through the list in order. On the first day, you use the number one, day two, move forward. And you reach out to them and you basically say, hi, Susie, it's your day on my prayer calendar. I would love to pray for you. What can I pray for? Or something along those lines. Make sure you mention that you're doing a prayer calendar. And they respond and they say, oh, it's really nice, and I could use prayer for this. And this is the key. You don't just say, okay, I'll pray for you, right? Because how many times as Christians do we say, I'll pray for you, and you don't? Because we're horrible people, apparently. So, let's just not do that anymore. When they give you the prayer request, you could send them a voice memo, right? Literally record your voice speaking. That's one thing that I've seen and used, and it's amazing because instead of just oh, you'll pray for you. No, you actually get to hear that prayer. Like when they receive that, they get to hear the prayer. They get to hear your emotion, your love, and your voice. You can take a video. You could call them, is great too, or you can actually type out in a text chat or an email if you're reaching out to them via email your prayer. And the plus side of using the written format is they can actually go back and look at it and like be re-encouraged every time. Glowing hand, I have a light. So that's what you do. You do it once a month, and you just start doing it faithfully. And it's really cool because the kind of the second step of it is once you get to basically day 8, it's been about a week since you first prayed for the first person on your list, which is neat. So you're going to reach back out to that person, and you're going to ask them, hey, Susie, how has God been answering prayers in your life? Oh, Siri thinks I'm talking to her. And it's cool because what it does is it gives them an opportunity to kind of reflect and realize, like, wait a second. And it's not, has God answered prayers? It's how is God answering prayers? Because if you're a believer, you're supposed to be praying all the time and kind of in constant communication. Or you might have just something on your heart. And when you ask someone, hey, what are your prayers? What's really neat is they might say, oh, God actually done this, this, and this. And they may not have really been reflecting on, wow, God did this really cool thing for me in my life, but you're kind of bringing it to mind. And it increases their faith when they reflect and realize God has been faithful. God has answered these prayers. And it increases your faith too. And so start writing those stories down. So you'll go through your list, right? Every day you're reaching out to a new believer, the same ones, keep it consistent, the same list of 28 to 30, whatever you want to do. And you're praying for them. A week later, you're following up with them. And so every single day you're praying for one person and you're following up with the person from the week prior. So the goal of this is to start creating kind of a culture of prayer on the people that you're reaching out to. After a few months, especially if they've really responded with a lot of gratitude, you can just tell they're really connecting with what you're doing. You can say, hey, this prayer calendar has been really cool because God has answered my prayers in this way. And if you've been writing down or recording or you remember some of the answered prayers, it's neat because you get to share with them, and now you're growing other people's faith with a story of someone that you prayed for previously. And that you could say, hey, would you like to do a prayer calendar too? In which case you send them this video or you just teach them yourself how to do the prayer calendar. It should be pretty simple, whatever way that you do it. And the idea is if you are praying for one person 5 minutes a day, that's 30 people in a month, right? So do the math. See, it's like 9 o'clock here, so my brain's kind of fried after putting all the kids to bed. What's what is it, 600 minutes? It's 5 times 30 is 6 to, oh dear, 5 times 3 is 15, 150 minutes, right? That sounds right. 5 times 3 is 150, is 15, so add the 0 back in. Yeah, 150 minutes of prayer in a month. Woo, math. Okay, so what happens if you can get 3 people to do that? 2, right? Now you just quadrupled that. Now you have 600 minutes of prayer every single month. It's what, like 20 minutes of prayer a day that you're doing, and especially if you're doing it in a community of people that maybe you go to church with them, or you see them on a consistent, regular basis. They're friends and family you see all the time, and you start creating a movement of prayer. Because what Paul taught, and if you read his book, which I highly recommend, Contagious Disciple Making, again, the link should be in the description below. It's really cool because you hear these stories of how when a movement of prayer begins, then God moves. Right? And it kind of makes sense. Like, why would God, who, basically since the New Testament, has used people as his principal tool for spreading his word in ministering to the world, right? To be that blessing that he promised to Abraham. He uses people, but he's not just going to go in and just do stuff without prayer, because no one's expecting him to do it, right? Like, if God diverts a hurricane, unless there's some sign that he's doing it, you can't tell. He just moved it, and we don't have that perspective, right? So by initiating this movement of prayer, you can start seeing God actually do a cool movement. Now, there's one thing that Paul recently taught me that can be kind of added onto that I think is really, really, really cool. And it's essentially using the prayer calendar as an evangelistic tool. And I'd actually kind of been already doing this because I was struggling to get 30 people on my list, which I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing about my life. I don't know, judge me accordingly. But what's neat is you do the same thing except with non-believers. And honestly, what I found is what I would say the pre-believers, because every knee is gonna bow at some point, right? What's really cool is they tend to appreciate it more because no one's offered it to them. It's not part of their culture, right? Usually speaking. And they're way more receptive, way more responsive, and they appreciate it a lot more. Now, you can't ask them to do a prayer calendar after a couple months, right? Because you don't know what kind of relationship with God they have, and that could be weird. And and I encourage you to pray for Jews and Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus and whatever, right? Atheists. You just don't want to be asking a Hindu to be like praying to Yahweh when they're like wanting to pray to Shiva or something, right? It doesn't make any sense. So use it as an evangelistic tool. And the same thing goes with the follow-ups. After 7 days, you reach out to them and you say, hey, how has God answered your prayers? And I've experienced that, people will tend to be honest where they're like, I don't really believe in God, but, this cool thing happened, right? It's like, okay, great. I'm really glad God did that, right? Just be like, look, here's my worldview. Sorry, deal with it. And it's been really neat because I think what it does is it opens people's eyes to the reality of God working. Even if they don't really believe in God yet, they're starting to start to entertain that possibility, right? They're starting to lose that deductive mindset and start maybe to put on an inductive mindset and starting to think about, what's the evidence, right? What's the evidence in my life that's been going on now that this person's been praying for me? Anyway, that's the prayer calendar in a nutshell. I hope that you can enjoy it. And it has been really cool to see that God can use even me in my prayers and some of the answered prayers of life-saving things that have happened as I prayed. I'm not in a hubristic way saying it was me who did it. It's just been amazing that God's used me, right? Because I think when we've walked with the Lord for any amount of time, we just realize, God, I want you to use me. I want to be impactful for your kingdom in some way. And it can be really hard with all this stuff, and unless you really are like a clergyman or woman or whatever, and you're like working for a church, you're like, but I got a job and family and all those other things. This is something that literally takes like 5 minutes a day. It's really cool. And hey, let me just bring this up as the final pointer before I close the video. You are gonna find a point where you don't hit it for like 3 or 5 days, okay? And it's gonna build up, and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I didn't follow up, and there's all these people I need to pray for that I haven't. And what am I gonna do? Look, here's the deal. Just move forward, okay? If you feel like you can, go back and catch up. Like that's kind of my thing, because I've been committed to doing this, and so that's kind of what I've given to God, is I'm gonna make sure I'm caught up when I get back to it. If that's not you and you just feel kind of stuck, just forget it. Just start with today, okay? Kind of pretend you're just doing it for the first day and just start going again. Get through a week and start doing your follow-ups, okay? Creating new habits is hard. This is a hard thing to do, especially on weekends for me, because my consistency just goes straight out the window. I don't have any consistency on the weekends. So do the best you can. That's all that God wants for you to do, right? Is do the best you can. Pray for his people, and you will see some really cool things happening. Anyway, that's it for me. Ben Reese, your faithful skeptic. And remember, don't let anyone do your praying for you.